together. Hey, welcome to our 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership study week number 8. Week 8. Like, this is exciting stuff.
Through.
Yeah. I hope that you guys are enjoying this as much as we are. I will say we, because I assume that Sherry's enjoying herself. I just assume that. But I feel like it just keeps getting better. Anybody else? Like I really do. I feel like every week is better and is more important. And I'm so thankful for the wisdom that Sherry said that we needed to take a week for each law, because I just keep thinking, I'm like, oh, okay, what am I going to apply this week? What's important? What's like, and I'm starting to pick out nuggets of things that I want to, that I want to implement. And I wish I would have brought my other book in here. I'm reading in my regular other growth time. I'm reading, still getting through Atomic Habits. I'm halfway through. You guys have no idea how much of a thing this is for me, because I like to read like about the first like third of a book or quarter of a book, get like a huge brainstorm, and then I don't feel like I need to read anymore and I just need to implement. So being halfway through this book is huge for me, and I will finish it ASAP. But it was talking about habits and habit forming. And I thought it was really interesting because he says, a lot of people ask me, how long does it take to form a habit? And he said, it's not the length of time, but the frequency in which you do it. So he says, maybe doing 100 push-ups a day forever seems like that's like crazy, but doing one push-up a day for like every day ongoing is a much more doable thing. And it's not necessarily that you're doing 100 of them versus doing one of them. It's doing the same action repeatedly over and over and over and over again. So maybe one day you do 50, maybe one day you do 20, but it's the habit that you start to form. And then you can start to increase the amount of work that you're doing once your frequency is set. And I thought that A was so brilliant with Plexus, because I was thinking about it with impact producing activity and all those things, but also it totally came into creating new habits, right? If you want to create new habits, do it so that you can do it, that the new habit that you're wanting to form can be done frequently, not necessarily the volume of the work that you do on it, right? So anyway, that was just my little extra plug for the day. And I might do something else because I've been taking extra notes, and I feel like I've got so much to share from that book. It's just so great. So do we have any takeaways from the law of respect from last week? People naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. On Sunday night, I guess it hasn't quite been a week. Well, I guess it is a week. It wasn't last Sunday anyway, or Saturday. Anybody have anything that they want to share, or should we just go forward? I'm just going to mute everybody, and then Sherry can unmute. There. That way, everybody who comes in will be muted. All right, number 8, the law of intuition. Leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. And I thought that I'd done a lot of highlighting before. I feel like this week, I felt like coloring in the entire page. Like, oh, but this is standing out. Oh, but this is standing out. And then I had to start like underlining and circling because I'd highlighted so much that the highlighting was no longer highlighting. Does anyone have a way to do that? Like, do you have color-coded highlighters that you use on a page and you're like, this is like the standout idea that I want to implement in this color. This is something that I should revisit in this. Maybe I need to start color coding. All right, he says, I've found that the law of intuition is the most difficult to teach. When I talk about it, natural leaders get it instantly, learned leaders get it eventually, and non-leaders just look at me blankly. Sometimes I can be a blank leader. Any thoughts with this?
On the intuitive side, I think we're all so much more intuitive in areas that we have skills in, areas that we have talents in. And so when I think of a mom who is really connected with her kids, she's intuitive. She can tell that that child isn't on track this morning. There's something not right. They're either picking up a cold, they've dealt with something at school that is bothering them. They know. So I think most of us are intuitive in those areas that we are very connected to. And so I think that's what makes this law of intuition in leadership a different kind of thing, because we haven't invested as much time in the leadership arena, and we haven't thought about how we're translating leadership in our family to leadership in a business. And so I think some of those pieces are ones that we have it, we just don't know we have it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, Chelsea says it's like a different type of connection.
Yes. Yeah.
And he talks about, the leaders are readers of their situation, of the trends, and of their resources. And I think it can be really challenging for a leader to be really good in all of those areas. They may be good at taking the temperature in the room, of knowing if people in a room is excited about a proposal or not, where people are at with an issue. And maybe they're the thermostat in the room who's actually creating that energy, but they may not be as strong in terms of reading long-term trends and where an organization needs to go, and therefore tend to seek out other people within their team to sort of fill that gap and do that. But when you're doing that as a leader, you also have to be aware of who and at what level is appropriate to fill that gap, because that person has to be a leader in their own right, respected by the team, to actually be listened by them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's very insightful. I want to go to humility again, because I know we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and how humility can shape or distort some of our strengths. And when I say humility, I don't mean like the real definition of humility. I mean like our own perception of humility. And so I'll use myself as an example. I was so glad that by the end of this chapter, he started to talk about how we need to trust our intuition, right? And I will say that intuitively, there have been many times in my business that I have had an intuition on something and it's been strong, like it's been so strong. But because I've been taught that I need to take other people's perspective into account, and also I think when you value the team that you're leading or the group of people that you're leading so much, you don't want to lead them down the wrong path. And intuition is one of those, and I don't want to say like kind of woohoo kind of things, but it's not necessarily quantifiable. You can't always say like, I feel this way and here's why I'm right. Do you know what I mean? Like it is more of like what he talks about. It's taking the temperature of the room. It's having a vision. It's having an insight. It's all of those things. And you know it if you're intuitive. You do really know it, but you can't really quantify as to why until maybe later, or maybe that's as things come. But I know many times in my journey, I've had a gut feeling about something. I've had an intuition that's been really strong, and I've gone to somebody I have trusted and respected to kind of validate my intuition. Didn't realize at the time it was an intuition. I just felt like it was a feeling. I didn't really, like I said, I didn't quantify it to be something that was important, right? I felt like I needed external validation for it. That person didn't have the same position as me, and so didn't have the same foresight, didn't see the same temperature of the people, all of those things. And they, what do they say? They're like, yeah, I don't really know. Yeah, right? And so when you're coming to somebody who you trust, who you respect, and you're looking for validation on this amazing thought process, this thing that's just going to be the best for the direction of the people you're leading, and they don't validate it, and then you throw that humility piece in there, you're like, oh, well, they've gone before me. They have so much more wisdom than I do. Then they should know better. And so maybe that wasn't actually something I should have done. I should just fall under their umbrella and, go forward and that kind of thing. And I'll tell you this, there have been so many times that has come back to bite me because I haven't trusted my own intuition, because I felt like I needed to humble myself before other people who have gone before me and done things and all of those kinds of things as well. Now, I think that the thing to note with that for in this case is that your intuition needs to have, like, you need to give yourself some time and a track record for intuition, right? If you just decide one day that you're going to turn your team upside down and whatever, you do something completely weird, and the people that you do have as mentors are like, hey, that's a little off. You've never done something like this before. You've never tried anything, whatever. Is it detrimental? Is it not? If it could be detrimental, then maybe listen to the people if you've never done anything intuitively. But if you have a good track record on intuition, maybe it's time to trust it. I don't know if I actually said anything there, but I feel like I did. Sherry and I were talking about how my brain's a little foggy, so I'm so sorry.
I think this is part of the reason why intuition is so hard to teach, is because you have to learn to trust your own intuition and figure out where you're strong in it and where you're weak in it. And I would say that is actually the true humility piece, is recognizing where do you have strong intuition and really learning to trust it, and saying that, oh, so-and-so actually has a stronger intuition in this area, and I'm going to defer to them and their leadership in that area, because that's where their strength is.
And it is owning your own strength, right?
Yeah.
And not using that covering of humility to be like, oh yeah, no, I don't really know. Like, yeah, do you know what I mean? Like it can be such a slippery thing. Humility honestly can be, because we think that we're being humble or we're trying to heed other people's advice instead of standing in it and going, I know this, right? Like, and I'll use an example. I do love the Steve Jobs example in here, but let's say like Brooke Hemingway, Emily Gibson. They have done things in Plexus that nobody ever did before, right? And I'm sure Celeste Gwynn is the same thing. I know Fallon Rabe is the same thing. Like, she did a lot of cultural things that were very counter to what was being done, but she knew it in her heart that this is what needed to be done. And her team has grown. Emily Gibson and Brooke Hemingway, I don't know if you guys know this story. They did something absolutely crazy. The first year that they were going to go to convention, they wanted the top prize. They wanted a shopping spree. And so they decided that they were going to give everybody who joined a free bottle of X Factor Plus when they joined. And that was what they decided they were going to do. It got them there. Funny thing enough, like, so the whole thing was for a shopping spree. They figured it out that they actually spent the same amount of money as the shopping spree because they didn't know better as far as like how to position, right, to spread the cost around. But it didn't matter, because the shopping spree, you guys, and I'll say this because we're working on Leaders Retreat, FYI, we're working on Leaders Retreat. The shopping spree isn't actually the prize. It's the bubble that's supposed to get your attention. But look at what that attention gave them. Huge momentum. It gave them so many more people in the organizations. It gave them confidence. It also won them. I think that was the year that they ended up going to Musha K, like the top earning trip. and it just snowballed. So yeah, when you look at the dollars, it was a straight exchange, X Factor plus for a shopping spree at Nordstrom. But they made that crazy choice and it turned out well because they had intuition that this is what they needed to do in order to, right? So if Chelsea told me that she was going to sponsor 100 people in the next 3 months and she was going to give each one of them out of her own pocket a bottle of X Factor Plus, I would say, I think we need to sit down with your leader and we can talk about this a little bit because I don't know that that's exactly what you need to do. Hey, you know what? If it was really going to work, cool, let's do that. I just don't want Chelsea to end up like without a house because she gave everybody X Factor Plus. She decided to order all, yeah, anyway. But it's just really cool to see people in our organizations who have displayed this amazing amount of intuition in their business. And you almost go like, where did that come from? How did you know that? And like Brenna said, it's hard to teach because a lot of times they'll be like, I just knew, or I just did it. I just knew.
Well, and the other aspect is I think this is really connected with the law of timing. And we haven't talked about the law of timing yet, but your example there, Janelle, of, it snowballed into something so much bigger, knowing that that was the start of this snowball. And quite frankly, once you get your round snowball that's compact, making a bigger snowball is quite easy. It's that putting the time and energy into making that compact snowball that's actually going to build the momentum for you. And I think that's one of, knowing when to jump on a project and say, this is it. I don't know what it's going to cost me. I don't know what it's going to demand in terms of time, but I know that this is something that's going to lead to something bigger.
And that's part of the intuition though, too, right? Because like, I don't know what it's going to cost me, but that's one of the pieces that he discusses is here's my vision for this. Here's the cost. Here's the projected cost. Here's what I need for it. Here are the resources. I'm just looking here because, it's all underlined. Readers of people. Hold on. It's somewhere in here. I'll find it. Leaders are readers of trends. Yeah. And for their resources. I really actually love that. Leaders are readers of their resources. A peak performer, I thought that was just really neat at the bottom of page 83 in the workbook. A good worker encounters a challenge and thinks, what can I do to help? And I can think of times in my journey as an ambassador that was my first intuition. What can I do to help? And then the high achiever says, how can I solve this problem? And we do talk about how we are problem solvers. We're problem solvers, we're solution seekers, right? But a peak performer wonders, what must I do to reach the next level so that I can overcome this? And I thought that was so well put. Chelsea, I like what you said there. It's like a self-taught thing. You need to know yourself, be in touch with yourself and your feelings is very important. I agree. And part of that too is not losing the absolute essence of who you are, regardless of the amount of personal growth you do. You come to the table with strengths, talents, and abilities that nobody else has. Nobody else has exactly the same thing as you do and does things exactly the same way as you do. You just need to grow them. You don't need to diminish any of them. You need to grow in your strengths.
I like how he goes on and talks about, getting to that next level of thinking, asking who is the best person to take this on? What resources do we possess that will help us? And what will this take financially? How can I encourage my team to achieve success? And it's one where this was sort of my thought of, teaching intuition is really difficult. But for those of us who find it, we have strengths in one area and not another, it's then creating these habits of saying, okay, when something comes up and my first instinct is to ask, what can I do to help? It's that, that's the trigger to then ask all these other questions, to actually see the other resources that you have available to you within your team, to reach out to.
Yeah, totally. And that's another reason I think that leads totally in well to, I always talk about, showing up for the woman on your left. Your presence isn't the only thing that's needed. Your growth is needed. Because if Brenna wasn't here today with her amazing expertise, for example, if she decided not to show up, Sherry and I would be totally on our own, not feeling super great. And y'all might just have a moment of silence, like for about 50% of the Zoom. But Brenna decided to show up. She also decided to grow, which I know 1,000% that the personal growth that Brenna has plugged in has reflected beautifully in her professional career. And she is so much more valuable to her team because of the personal growth that she's done, because she gets to be that person in those spots, right? With not just talent, but talent and then growth, right? So not just showing up, but doing the work so that your team can choose you in those places like, hey, there's a hole that only Brenna can fill. Wow, I'm really, really glad that she's here and she's growing and whatever, we can plug her in here.
And I think it's one where when we see that bigger picture of what resources do we have available to us, who can show up on a Saturday morning Zoom, it's realizing it's not all about us. It's realizing that it's a solution that doesn't necessarily take people. It can be solved by dollars. It can not necessarily take dollars. It can take something else. It's maybe a time thing. So that's one where you can start seeing more options and more solutions to bring to your problem solving.
Absolutely. And I do love how God tends to put together the perfect group of people. One amazing example of that was the church that we were in Carlisle when we first got married, was a very, very small group of people. When we got there, we were number 17 and 18 in the congregation. And the 4 people before us were our new pastor, his wife, and their 2 kids. So there was not a lot of people. And it was probably about 40% children under the age of 10. It was a very loud, wonderful place to be. However, as the church began to grow, we saw God bringing in very specific instrumental people. And my husband had the insight to say, you know what we need? We need like a church Rolodex, so that if we need a plumber, we know who in the congregation is a plumber or who has skills in that area. If we need somebody who knows how to cook turkeys for 67 people, we know that we're calling Mary, because Mary knows all the things about turkeys and probably has 3 electric roasters sitting in her garage for such a time as this. If we need this, we have this person. And it's identifying the people with skills, talents, and abilities, and then realizing, like, lifting your head and going, we have absolutely everything we need to run exactly the way that we're supposed to and to grow simply by using the strengths of the people around us. It was so cool. It was really cool. Chelsea said, this is just like the podcast that I had shared for everyone to listen to. Trusting your gut is trusting your intuition. Yeah, that was the Brooke Knitt's podcast. It was so good, wasn't it? Chelsea, do you want to add anything else to that? What you took away from that? You could unmute yourself. You're welcome to.
Well, it's just, she told us not to be scared of having that butterfly feeling or feeling sick, and to actually like use it as like a strength. Like, don't run away from it. Actually use it, like give it as like a good, a positive light. So if you are feeling that way as you're on or wanting to make that decision, and it makes you feel nervous, do it. Because no matter what, you're going to grow from it anyways, one way or another. As long as, well, I guess as long as you learn from it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Pardon me. You know, it's interesting that we've heard so many times that leaders are readers. And so when I embarked on this and I just kind of had glanced over the page, I'm like, oh yeah, leaders are readers. We're supposed to read books. But it's just so cool to give so many different angles of what you're supposed to be a reader of. So I don't know, did you guys discover, like, where are your strengths in this area? Do you guys feel like readers of trends, readers of their resources, readers of people, readers of themselves?
I don't know. As long as I have a connection or similarity, like a same, yeah, I guess connection, or like someone just like me, or if I can actually put myself in their shoes and see myself doing what they've been doing, and like have a bit of the same vision, then it kind of grabs my attention. If I can't relate to them, I guess then it's kind of like, okay, nice story. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it says reading people is perhaps the most important intuitive skill leaders can possess. So I think Chelsea, I think that you do really well at reading people.
The one that really struck me was leaders are readers of people. President Lyndon Johnson once said that when you walk into a room, you don't belong in politics if you can't tell who's for you and who's against you. That statement also applies to any other kind of leader. Intuitive leaders can sense what's happening amongst people and know their hopes, their fears, and their concerns. They can sense what's happening in a room, whether there's curiosity or doubt or reluctance or anticipation or relief. Reading people is perhaps the most important intuitive skill leaders can possess.
And again, that's a tough one to teach. But I did really love, and it wasn't on that particular one, but I think that the advice is brilliant. The application, right? Oh no, it was under the application of reading people, reading books on relationships, engage more people in conversations, and become a people watcher. I thought that was so brilliant. And again, it goes back to anyone can do what we do as long as they're willing to grow. And I mean, it's not like, I do think that applies to most everything in life. Obviously, I'm not going to be as great an architect as somebody who is really strong in spatial recognition, really great with numbers, all of those things. But I can learn the skills. I can learn the black and white. I can learn all of those things as long as I'm willing to do the work and realize that I may not be working in my strength, but I could actually do it, right? It's kind of like how he talks about, not everybody is going to be, if you go back to the introduction when he's doing the test, not everyone is going to score 100% on every single thing, but it doesn't mean that you can't get good at those things, right? I think a lot of us have seen people who have decided to come into this business and they don't have people skills. And you're like, okay, I can work with that actually. If you are willing to learn, how to people, you can do this, right? What gets sad is when people hit that because then they honestly hit that terror barrier like the moment that they walk into the pool, right? It's like, oh, people skills, right? It's easier for a lot of people to say, I don't like people, or I don't work well with women, or right, because there's a what's the word, like almost like a protective barrier that you put up so that you don't actually have to go and get better at communicating, at forgiveness, at not taking offense, all of those things. If somebody comes in and they want to work on it and they will read and they will learn, right, then it's great. But it's super disheartening when you have somebody who comes in and says, these are my big goals, but I don't read. I don't do that. Oh.
We have a couple of comments in the chat, and I'm just going to roll them all together because I think they're really great comments of just living in a digital age right now when you don't have, the casual conversations with people to find out what do they dream about, what are their interests, what are their hobbies, what are their strengths that they could actually bring to a team and that they would be delighted to share with others. And how do you do that when we're doing everything via virtual meetings and texting and other things? And I really feel this. I feel this in my church community. For years, I was the one who, visited and got to know the new people to find out where we could plug them in and where they could really find a home for themselves in the church. And we now have so many new people who have joined our church since this whole thing started. First of all, it's really hard to meet them all now that we're semi back meeting together. But then even really pulling out that conversation to be more about them and their strengths and what their interests are so that you can actually learn that. And I think this is one where Janelle's comment of it's the same stuff. It's that same understanding personalities, being willing to invest in people, because these things take time. It takes time to develop that relationship, that connection. It takes time for some people to open up more than others so that you can actually get an idea of where they're at.
Totally. And it also, I think that especially when we have people who are coming in, like Sharon was saying, it's hard to see the strengths of others because we don't have the opportunity to see and know like them on a one-to-one basis. But that's just the thing. You can still grow a business and you can still encourage people to do the same thing without being like sitting beside them, like in the passenger seat, right? And I think number one, that comes from layering different experiences with those people and having good discussions about like things like this, right? I mean, I felt like, when I met Chelsea for the first time, I felt like I'd known her for a while because she's here and she shares and like all of those things. Like I would have no problem sitting down to dinner with Chelsea and feeling like she was an old friend when we really haven't spent a ton of time face to face, right? But it's because she's plugged in and she's doing the things and she's sharing, right? The other thing too is becoming almost an investigator of people. What do people share? Where are their values? Sherry, you'd be so proud of me. Sitting right here. The values exercise, right? And that's part of getting to know people, right? And maybe we need to integrate that values exercise as being almost more important than like the color personality thing or whatever, right? Because once you know where someone's values sit, you can work a lot with that, right? And you can help them on their business journey because, I was sitting talking with, it was Chelsea, it was you and me and a couple other gals after the event. And they were talking about, I don't know what to post. And I said, go to the values exercise. So for me, and I said this laughingly, that my big thing was joy. Joy was my biggest value. That's what I chase after, right? So what brings me joy? Because what brings me joy will probably bring somebody out there joy, right? If something if that is what my value is, it means that that's the value that other people get from me. And if that is not Sherry's number one value, she might need somebody in her life who's a little bit screwy up top to pull some joy in, right? It's that blue in with all the green and the yellow, right? We all need everybody's value pieces to add those pieces that don't come naturally to us. And that's seeing the strengths in others. You're right, Chelsea. It would be a good first step. Find your values and then grow from there. I really like that concept of, hey, you're here. You want to do this? Great. Let's find out more about you. Where are your values? I think that would be brilliant. Oh, I honestly did, like, when I was reading through this, I'm like, okay, I need, sorry, you guys will laugh because you know, a lot of you know my love for planners. And I use them so much more than I used to. I not only need a monthly spread and like a daily spread, I feel like I need a week one in there as well, so that I can remember what my focus is for the whole week and not just lose it every 2 pages when I turn the page, right? So can I ask you guys that? How are you, or are you not? I guess you don't have to call yourself out. But when you get nuggets in here, how are you making sure that they stay at the forefront of your brain for the next week? Because it would be such a shame to have all of these epiphanies and then just turn the page. Like, we do want to implement, even if it's just one nugget a week, right? It doesn't have to be 17, but even if it was one thing, right? Are you a Post-it note yeah.
So I have a stack of just pieces of paper that are cut up small that I've been writing my one nugget a week on. And then I take them down to my office and I put them on a bulletin board that's just behind my computer so that I see them all week long. And I'm keeping actually all of them there as the list is growing, just to remind myself of the things that I want to personally grow around.
I love that. It's so organized. I'm so not organized. I think another thing would be, even if it wasn't a bulletin board, if you did it like on your bathroom mirror or like wherever you get ready, so that, right? Another great place would be right in front of your toilet. I'm sorry. That's how I taught my kids how to skip count. I will tell you this right now. If anybody wants a hack to teach a grandkid or a kid that's struggling with like math facts or whatever, you know what you do? You take a dry erase marker, and if the mirror is sitting in front of the toilet, I did skip counting with a dry erase marker on my mirror. All of my kids knew how to skip count. If there was anything I wanted them to learn, I stuck it on the mirror in the bathroom so that they could see it when they were using the potty. Yeah. I have another story about that too, but I'll save it.
Very good use of time and space. Very good use of time. So when we look at page 85, it talks about 3 levels of leadership intuition. And we seem to be a little bit stuck on, well, either I've got it or I don't, on the intuition side. And yet, when we talked about it in the beginning, we started by realizing that, you know what, if I get more skills in an area, then I also can develop more intuition in the area. So I think what we are being told, or what we're being reminded, is as we develop our leadership skills, we also develop our leadership intuition. So if we look at page 85, and there's 3 major intuition levels. One, those who naturally understand leadership, or with exceptional leadership gifts, instinctively understand people, know how to move from point A to point B, even when they're kids, they act as leaders. And I don't know that we have all the people here that we often have on our Saturday morning, but I remember one session earlier, and somebody was talking about, yeah, when they were kids, they were the leader. They were the one that set up the leadership things. They did all the leadership things. But they hadn't thought about that as being leadership now. So is there anybody here that sort of can go to another place in their life where they were just doing those leadership things automatically, but you hadn't really thought about how that translated?
Chelsea, aren't you a bus driver? That is leadership to the next level. I'm sorry. It just is.
Well, I guess, yeah, but that would be my past. That's present. I don't know. I always gravitated to people older than me. But I was an only child, so for some reason I grew up with adults. So I think I got along with my teachers better than I did with my people that were my own age. I don't know, maybe just I had more of the same mindset. I don't know, because I was so used to being around that same mindset. I never really, and then I guess becoming a mom, it never really scared me because I saw the same traits of being that older person. Now I'm kind of almost in a pickle right now because I got kids that are about the age where I struggled the most when I was growing up. So it's trying to guide them, in the right way when I was kind of like asking the same questions. And I never really found out the answers because I didn't have, that guidance for that. So yeah, it's, it breaks your heart when you see your kid doing exactly the same, living out your past, and you just want to like fix it, but you can't. So, because they have to live and learn, but guide them in the right direction, I guess. And then I don't know, the bus, yeah, like I'm the first one they see every day. So, and the last one they probably see when they get off. I always make sure that I'm like, good morning, making sure they have that. Because they even like talked about that a lot of kids right now are almost a couple years behind on social scales because of the pandemic. They haven't been around each other, and we have to be patient. They might be acting, even though they might be 13 years old, they're probably acting like they're 10. So yeah, it was like a thing that we had to do before before school started, and we had to be a part of it. It was a training thing, and it was like just someone mentioned that, and it was just kind of like, yeah, you're probably right. So yeah, we had to make sure expectations were just a little bit, I guess paused a little bit, and just
That's
I
interesting.
don't know. I don't know what else.
No, that's interesting.
That is very interesting.
It's very interesting. I think we often are taking the word leadership and giving it a huge meaning when it's really just all about influencing, sharing, guiding. And it's not such a big, huge thing. Yes, it matters. And yes, it's important. But everybody who's here is doing that every day.
Well, and I was going to add to that. I have written down here in the margin, people need to lead to exercise their leadership muscles. And so there are lots of areas in your life that you do lead that you probably discount, like what Sherry said, like we're making it out to be this big thing, right? But if we just used business as an example, you guys might say, well, but I don't have a team to lead. I don't have a big group of people to mobilize and leverage resources to help them achieve their goals. And like, I don't have a big group of people, right? And that's why we invite you guys to, no offense, use our bigger team as guinea pigs. Go for it. Please lead by example, lead in our chats, lead in our group pages, lead on Zooms, lead on book club, like exercise your leadership muscles and make your mistakes here. This is a safe place to make mistakes, right? And to exercise those things so that you meet somebody who has amazing potential that you see and you're like, oh, I remember watching Diana. Diana had that person, or Diana reached out to this sideline and she did this and blah, blah, blah. Like there are so many opportunities that you can flex those muscles and grow them before you are actually there. Hi, Cody. She's got her hand up.
Hello, how are you?
We're good. How are you?
Good. I think one of the things is people, I don't know why this is weird.
There you go.
Yeah, that's better. I have found for me and some other people I know that we're already leaders, but once we get the title, it messes with us, right? You know, you're already doing the things, you're already doing the whatevers, you're already proved yourself. You've already, otherwise people wouldn't call you a leader. You've already showed up in those ways. Then I know when I was a little bit younger, when I got the leader title or supervisor or whatever it was called at the time, I froze. I was like, I don't know how to be a supervisor. I don't know how to do any of that stuff, because in my head it became not something that I already do. It was something that I have to become, and it was a mess with your head thing, simply because wrapping that around, and there was no quote unquote training, and so it was it was use your intuition, and it was use your skill set, and it was and it was like, yeah, I've already been doing that. And now what? Because I think you want me to go to the next level, but if I'm already doing it, I don't know what the next level is. And so it was a mess. And actually, I ended up saying, just take this supervisory title away from me, because this is dumb. And they all laughed, and I laughed, and they took it away, and I was still the leader of the group that I worked with. They just used my lead as the lead, and we all carried on in the same way we were, but I was leading the team from the back rather than the front. And I find that nowadays, yes, I can do it, and yes, it's just the same thing every day that I already do. That, can I learn some skills? Absolutely. Can I move into new things and take on more responsibilities um, um, for people and for tasks, which I can. And it's taken me a lot of years, and I've learned how to delegate a lot, but that was probably my biggest hurdle, because I just do it all myself. And then it was like, well, how are you teaching anybody when you're just doing it yourself? And it was like, yes, but it's so much faster. Um, and then it was like, yeah, but they're not going to learn and they're not going to grow. I also find that it's kind of difficult as a leader, because my expectations for myself are a very, very, very high bar. And I know that other people don't necessarily have that same bar. So then I say, okay, well, they don't have the same bar, so I'm going to just make up a bar that is significantly lower. And then it's like, well, they're not even making that. Come on, like, it's got to be something. So because I'm an overachiever in many ways, figuring out what is an achievable thing for other people becomes very difficult for me. I'm like, am I pushing you too hard, or am I not pushing you hard enough? Because I know I'm like, right now, I'm just like hanging out, waiting for you to do this. And you look like you're running a million miles an hour, and this doesn't seem to be working for both of us. So there's those kind of figuring out where you are, figuring out where they are, trying to match that up, because you want to keep, you want to have them keep growing, but you don't necessarily want to push them so hard quit, right? So I find, for me, that's very difficult, of being able to let it flow naturally. Now, that's super hard for me when I have the title. When I don't have the title, it's, hey, you're doing your thing. If you want some help, let me know. If you don't want any help, I'll leave you to it till you come back to me. Right. So there's that conundrum of balance and figuring it out between everybody. Right. Anyways, that's kind of my.
Cody, I think you summarized that brilliantly, because I think it is, the balancing act so many of us are on. And it's one of how to ask better questions. It's better questions to learn people's strengths, better questions to learn where people are struggling. And it's not necessarily that they're struggling and running so fast at work. It's the fact that their mind is at home on a completely different situation. And making yourself available to be that sounding board so that they can actually focus at the task at hand for a portion of their day, and just really asking more of what are the things that they find easy, that they see as their strengths, that they enjoy doing and are happy to do more of, and what are the things that actually give them stress. And anytime that they're asked to do that, they actually freak out, and it takes them 2 hours to wrap around their head the fact that they're going to have to do this, even if it's only like a half-hour task. So it's asking more and more questions, particularly as a team grows, and making yourself accessible and approachable, so that they can actually share with you.
Absolutely. The other
I
thing
think,
about that is in, in a corporate world, you have a team, and what isn't my skill set, somebody else can do, and it brings the team up. But in this type of business, you kind of have to do it all, You don't have to do it well. You can work on doing that. You can pull strength and advice and help from other people, but you still got to do it, right? So anyways.
I actually think that conversation is a critical piece of intuitive leadership, because it's the intuitive leadership that asks the right question, that finds the sticking point, that moves beyond the simplicity of the job to the complexity of the person's situation and what else is a part of it. So yes, Cody and Brenna, I think that's absolutely brilliant in terms of the intuitive part.
Totally. All right, that we just have a minute left or two. That's so great. I really wanted to highlight something that is actually on the bottom of page 87. And I thought this was a really great, a really great takeaway, where it's talking about mobilizing people and harnessing resources and actually reminding yourself to do these things, right? And so this may be the thing that you write on your sticky note or on your bathroom mirror or whatever you're doing. Sharon sent me a message and said Elise has been listening and she thinks my skip counting idea is a great idea. Now she wants to write on her mirror. So sorry, not sorry. It'll work. And it erases. But who is the best person to take this on? What resources do we possess that will help us? What will it take financially? And how can I encourage my team to achieve success? And that doesn't need to be a massive undertaking. It can be small things. Again, don't think that all of these things need to have, you can implement all of these things regardless of where you're at in your leadership journey, and grow from where you are. So yeah, Sherry, do you have any other thoughts? No. Awesome.
I don't. I think this has actually been really amazing.
It's lovely. Yeah. And we're both still here. So that's really great. Thank you, everyone, for what you have added to today. It's been so valuable. Next week, we cover the law of magnetism. Who you are is who you attract. And you know what? That could potentially step on some toes, right? Because sometimes we look at the people that are coming into our organizations or into our field of leadership and we're like, yeah, I just need, like you hear it in Plexus all the time, I just need a rock star. And you think, I am who I attract. Maybe I need to reframe that a little bit, but we shall see as we cover that in the next week. Have a great day, you guys. Take care. Drink lots of water. Yeah. Have a great day. Bye, guys.